The patience of our members has been taxed beyond tolerable limit. NEC therefore resolved to embark on a 4-week rollover total and comprehensive strike beginning from Monday, 14th February 2020, which is today.
This sort of announcement is one that students of higher education institutions, their parents or guardians never wish to hear. Another round of strike which may snowball into an indefinite industrial action that will cripple learning activities in Nigerian public universities if the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, and the federal government do not come to actionable agreements.
The government has failed to fully implement the memorandum of action signed with the Academic Staff Union of University on 23 December 2013. Payment of ASUU member salary and emolument with integrated payroll and personnel management information system IPPIS, and non-adoption of the University Transparency and Academic Solution have continued to shortchange our members.
While ASUU and the federal government slug it out, with the union state chapters gearing up for full compliance to the 4-week total and comprehensive strike, students in public universities in the southwest to the southeast, south-south to the northern region who are holding the short end of the stick in this face-off bear their minds.
Our parents are there counting years you are going to school while you spend up to 10 years in school.
I finished secondary school in 2007. I spent 9 years at home before I finally gained admission. Time is going.
We're supposed to be graduating in 2 weeks' time. Our exam's supposed to start today. I have exam by 3 p.m. That's why I'm in school currently. But the ASUU members on meeting currently saying that all exams that have not been written from 8 till 12 will not be written again.
Honestly, I'm indifferent because they need to listen to these people. They need to listen to them. They are human beings. They need money.
Each side are claiming to be on the right path. And what I want the federal government now to consider is that, when two elephants are fighting, actually, it's the grass that suffers.
Protracted industrial actions are not alien to Nigerian tertiary institutions. But this is one strike that many believe should come to an end soon, with quick and lasting resolution of the issues. Yomi Otaigbe, Channels Television News.
And that was the story that greeted the headlines yesterday, that ASUU was in a meeting, and the outcome of that meeting was that ASUU had declared a 1-month warning strike. Some people say it was a black rose given the students on Valentine's Day, but I mean, this is where we currently are. Some people have taken great pains to enumerate how many times ASUU has gone on strike, for what reasons they've gone on strike. We have with us this morning Dr. Christopher Piwuna, who is the Vice President, Academic Staff Union of Universities, to shed a little more light on why the union has embarked on this action. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Well, it would seem like it's another bitter pill. I imagine that this is also not an easy decision for ASUU to reach. But can you tell us, how come negotiations broke down this time around?
Well, thank you very much. And first of all, let me express our sadness at the turn of events, particularly for students and parents. On Friday, when we drove into University of Lagos to hold this meeting, there was a matriculation exercise going on. Young people, very impressionable, 16, 17-year-olds with their parents. We met them at the gate right into the university as we went to start this meeting. And we were saying in the bus as we drove into Unilag that we hope we won't have to proceed on a strike for the sake of these young ones whom, the parents were excited, the kids were all over the place, with their gowns. And so for us, it's a very painful thing that ASUU has to embark on another strike again. Among our members, we have people who are undergoing studies, who have lost promotion because they couldn't complete their studies. Our wives, too. Some of them are doing their master's degree programs, some PhD. So nobody is spared of the pain when we go on strike. Having said that, why have we gone on strike again? Where did the negotiation break down? Well, I think the government is in a better position to say why it broke down. But when we met on the 22nd of December 2020 with government, that meeting was possible because of the credibility of the Chief of Staff to the President. We didn't want to have any conversations with them again, but because he intervened, and we felt this was an individual that knew us. He was at the time the Pro-Chancellor of the Bayero University, Kano, so he knew the problems of the university, having also worked in the university for some time. So we went for that meeting. After that meeting, on the 23rd, we met as a union and decided to suspend the strike. Ordinarily, because of Professor Gambari, we would have just suspended the strike. But we've interacted with these characters for so long that we felt, despite his presence in the scene, we needed to say we're suspending this action conditionally.
When you say these characters, who are you referring to?
We're referring to the people in the Ministry of Labor, Education, NUC, Accountant General's Office, Ministry of Finance. They are the characters we're referring to. They are the characters we're referring to. We said we'll suspend this action conditionally. And we did. At the time we met with them, they said they were going to inaugurate the visitation panels immediately after New Year, January 2021. They didn't get to inaugurate those committees until April 2021. Typical of Nigerians, when you call them to work, they prove themselves. Between April and June, the visitation panels had completed their reports, submitted the reports by the 31st of August. As we're talking, sitting in this hall now, we have not seen the outcome of that visitation panel report. We're talking about how the negotiations broke down again. Okay? We met with government in December 2020. We said to them, look, we have agreed with you in 2013 through the needs assessment that you will provide, money for the revitalization of the Nigerian university system. You've done something. Goodluck Jonathan's government gave about 220 billion. There was another tranche to be given. We understand. We met with government on the 25th of March 2021, and we said there is a balance at that time of 170 billion naira for revitalization. Not for ASUU members, for revitalization of our public universities. How are you going to give this money to the universities? They said, well, ASUU, you go back and decide, give us a schedule. On the 26th of March, just the next day, we brought a schedule that will spread the 170 billion naira balance to the universities due to the prevailing economic circumstances. That was the reason we gave. Okay, spread it over a year and a half or so. Not a dime has reached any Nigerian university for that 170 billion. The money that they gave at the end of that strike, they had given for revitalization, but there was a balance.
How much was that? Because I do recall that I think there was some money given by the Buhari administration towards this revitalization. It was something that when the money was approved, I don't know whether they eventually got to pay that money. I think ASUU was also, you know, on edge as well, saying that they also needed their own money as well. I think it was something, I don't know, but I know that there was some money. I'm very want to call any amount of money right now.
I'll give you the amount.
Yes.
It was 35 billion. That 35 billion...
Was it 35 billion that was approved?
Yeah.
Or was 35 billion that was released?
35 billion was released.
What was approved?
For our agreement with government,
yes,
they gave us 75 billion. 40 billion for our EA, including the non-teaching staff in the university.
And it was last year?
It was last year. Exactly. But this was an agreement that was reached with them in December 2020. December 2020. The disbursement of that 35 billion,
yes,
just took place in December 2021. December 2021. Less than 2 months ago.
So I think you now have the figure which I remember was 75 billion.
Yeah.
It was 75 billion which was approved. So you're saying that of that 75 billion, it was only 35 billion.
That was meant for revitalization.
And then of that, of the remaining 40 billion was for? For
EAE. Earned academic allowances and earned allowances. Earned academic allowances and earned allowances. Earned allowances for the non-teaching colleagues in the university. So the 40 billion was not entirely for ASUU, but government released 40 billion to the universities and 35 billion for revitalization.
So that is separate from the 170 billion.
Exactly.
Which you said was also due as at when?
As at the time we were meeting with them in December 2020. In December 2020. Recall that we went on strike for 9 months. Before we proceeded on strike, the 220 billion or so, yes, was supposed to be released. It is part of that 220 billion. You see, when we begin to talk about these figures, even we get confused because, I mean, for how long?
So let me get this straight, because it's a good thing you acknowledge that there's some confusion. I mean, when we get to hear these amounts of money, you're now wondering, hold on, this 75 billion is supposed to be part of what?
Yeah.
You know,
you
think that a part of the promise is being fulfilled.
You know, when somebody is owing you money, or you're owing, and you keep paying in bits and pieces, at the point you don't even remember how much is still left.
Yeah, but
of the money.
I think that we should have an idea of how we will say this is how much government promised. Yeah. Isn't it correct?
We do.
From the 2009 agreement up to the 2013 needs assessment agreement, I think, which government carried out by itself.
Exactly.
And then up to when government now started fulfilling, I don't know if they've started fulfilling, but when they started paying some of it through some of the demands that ASUU has been making, we should be able to say that this was the chunk money that was demanded, and this is how much government has been able to pay, and this is the balance that is left that we are still expecting as a union. Yeah. Shouldn't we be able to say that?
Well, we can say it. I was just trying to tell you how the thing has become so, you know, unwinding for all of us. 220 billion was given to the universities by the Goodluck Jonathan administration
in
2013. The entire money was about 1.3 trillion naira. It was going to be given in 5 tranches. So that first tranche had been given by the Goodluck Jonathan administration. The next government, which is this government, was supposed to take the next tranche of about 200 billion, right? It is out of that 200 billion that they have given 35. So we have about 170 left. We met on the 25th of March, 2021 last year, and told them, what about this 170 billion? When are you going to advance this money to the universities? They said, no, they don't have money. We said, okay, so how can we help you? They said we should go and bring a schedule for them to look at on how to pay. So based on the economic circumstances, we decided to suggest to them to give every quarter 42.5 billion naira, spread over about a year and a half. It is that 170 or so billion that we're still talking about, that no kobo has been given.
Is that why you've decided to embark on this one?
This is one of the reasons. The other reasons are the issue of UTAS, which you all know, IPPIS. Since IPPIS was introduced, the universities have never been the same. Any honest vice chancellor will tell you the challenges. Any bossa, if any university, public university, federal government in Nigeria, will tell you the challenges that they are having with IPPIS.
What is a challenge?
Number one, initially we had complained that the IPPIS did not have the human component, human resource component. It was supposed to be a handshake of the payroll and the human resource. Okay? The payment and the human resource. As it is now, well, at the time that they started, we had told them that you need to marry this. If you don't, you won't be able to capture us, or it won't be able to serve the purposes in the university. And what there are peculiarities in the universities, that we go on sabbatical, that we are visiting lecturers, that we are adjunct lecturers in the university. This is standard practice. You know, it's not about Nigerian universities. They said, no, they've taken care of sabbatical. They've taken care of visiting. Oh, they are going to knock off contract staff. They have tried to do all that and have failed. Since they introduced IPPIS in the universities, to this day, as I'm sitting down here, there are members of our union who have gone on sabbatical that have still not been paid. At the time we started with these people, look at this. This whole document, no matter how you try to focus your camera on this document, you cannot see it. We have reduced it to so little. It could have been a very bulky document. These were names, numbers of our members who had not been paid salaries or who have been knocked off, you know, from the payroll as a result of the introduction of IPPIS. After our strike, this number has reduced.
The number has reduced. So
it has reduced.
In other words, it's been taken care of.
Well, yes, but when you want to take care of a problem that you say you have the capacity to address, and it's taking you over a year, as at today, we have people, let me talk about my university now. We have people in the University of Jos that have not received salary for the past 6 months.
Dr. Pimuna, I would like to ask you, because with this UTAS versus IPPIS, which, you know, I do recall that it would seem that immediately the federal government said that, you know, they were going to introduce IPPIS. ASUU was immediately up in arms. It would seem that it didn't even give the system some time to work, or to even, you know, see if it could work with the university system before it was shut down by the lecturers. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, you're correct. That at the onset, we knew this was not going to work. No, we didn't give it a chance.
So let me tell you the impression that was out there. The impression that was out there was that the system had been, the payment system that was currently in operation in the universities had been so abused and so filled with corruption that there were going to be resistance to any attempt to try to clean up the system.
Well, that's not correct. That was not the reason why we didn't give it a chance.
That's the impression that was out there.
Well, let me clear that impression. When they approached us with the IPPIS instrument in 2007, we looked at it and we told them that this is not going to work. And we told them the reasons why it was not going to work. I'll get to the issue of corruption and, you know, the shady deals that go on in the university. It wasn't going to work for so and so and so reasons. They said, okay, since you have identified this is in 2007, can you produce for us something that will address these issues? We said, okay, we'll have a look at it. But we were supposed to meet with them again, the Office of the Accountant General back then, to see how we're going to work these things out. We didn't hear from the officers again until 2017 or so, when they tried to introduce it again. And we said, look, since our last meeting in 2007, you have not called us back to see what we're doing or to interact and know what needs to be done. So you can't do it. We have told you the reasons why you can't do it. Well, long story, about a year or two ago, they decided to enforce IPPIS in the Nigerian university system, and we're having the challenges that I've just shown you, some of them. The problems are still there. So on the issue of corruption, that we were fighting IPPIS because we didn't want the sleaze, we were going to so many universities, 5, 10 universities. Well, you know, we're all educated. You have relations who work in the university. You have friends who work in the university. You have classmates who are professors and are working in the university. Ask them, how many of them go on sabbatical? Is it easy to just go on sabbatical? I've been in the Department of Psychiatry in Jude for about 22 years now. I have not seen more than 2 people come on sabbatical to my department. The same thing with other departments. It's not as if everybody is going on sabbatical. So that issue of wanting to take money into play, after all, sabbatical is an established practice.
Yes,
all over.
Sabbatical is one. But in terms of going to, I mean, right now, we know that there's a plethora of private universities. They are also looking for lecturers for their own universities. We know that a lot of the resource people who go to private universities are from government universities, and that people do part-time there. How does the federal government take account of that?
It's not even the federal government. The universities can take charge in that one if they want to. And there are rules for sabbatical. You can't visit more than 1. You can't.
Is that the same thing as sabbatical?
No, sorry. For sabbatical, the rules are there. For visiting, you can't go on visiting for more than 2 universities at any point in time. While you have a primary place of employment. The rules are not being enforced. It's not ASUU that will enforce the rules. It's our vice chancellors and administrators in the university that should do that. But let me tell you, the issue of corruption that people, who are those doing the corruption? How many vice chancellors have we reported to the Ministry of Education, to regulatory agencies that they have not taken any action on? How many vice chancellors?
Well, there are a few questions that my colleagues in Lagos have for you as well. Gentlemen.
Let me just bring this in. So this question around, visiting other universities, you say you shouldn't do more than 2 per time. It has been a big one, and I'm glad that we're talking about this, really. So do you think also that the lecturers have complicity in this whole rot that we see in the education sector? Because it's been said that if you have alternatives, if you have other places you can visit, then there's a tendency to not pay attention to the primary ones, which is, our public universities, and focus all your attention, your energy, the best in those other ones. So do you think that the lecturers should also at least say, you know what, guys, we're also partly responsible for this rot?
Well,
Please go
I
ahead.
didn't hear the last part of your question, but I think I get the sense of what you're saying. It's human beings. It's our lecturers. It's our members that go on visitation. It's our members that go on sabbatical. It's our members that are adjunct lecturers. So if they find anybody going on visitation, it's our member. I'm not saying they are not angels or spirits that go on sabbatical. That is accepted. But it is because that is possible. I mean, abusing those things, those privileges or those rules are possible. That was why the federal government, through NUC, university councils, decided that there will be rules. don't do this, don't do that. If you do more than 2, these are the consequences. It's not ASUU that would enforce those rules. All ASUU does is to call the attention of university administrations and say, look, this thing is a problem. We have discussed at NEC of ASUU, and we have told our members that, look, you are killing yourselves. Nobody is taking care of your health. And you are visiting in very far places. There is even a distance that you must cover. If you go beyond that distance, you've broken another rule. So we're not saying that it's not our members that go on visitation, but the rules are there to check. And it is not our place to enforce the rules. It's the responsibility of the university administrations to enforce those rules. So if they are not enforcing the rules, all we do is to keep drawing their attention to the fact that you need to enforce these rules. So I don't know how else or what else ASUU is supposed to do.
The question then rises from the response that you've given now, the culpability of the university systems as well, and also tapers from some of the questions that Malkwe asked you about the responsibility of the university administrations in all of these conversations that we are having. You know, what irks me in all of these is, in all the conversations that we've had so far from you on this matter, not a single mention has been made of the Federal Ministry of Education. And of course, almost like you are even absolving the university systems themselves. So I'm wondering, is there no role for the Federal Ministry of Education, who are the direct employers or the ones that directly work with ASUU members? Is there no role, in no way that the university systems themselves could have prevented this from happening, since they are the ones that you directly work with?
Well, that's a very valid question, really. Let me just say that from my comments, I do not see anywhere that I'm trying to absolve university administration. In fact, I'm accusing them of not enforcing the rules. I've said that there are universities that we have found, you know, corruption, and we have reported to regulatory agencies as well as our ministry. So we're not absolving the universities at all. Why is the Ministry of Education not fully involved in all that is going on? Most of the time, it is the Minister of Labor that we engage with. And the Ministry of Education, to the best of my knowledge, have attended all our meetings. The NUC Executive Secretary has been in all our meetings, and at each of our meetings he reminds us that he will report to the minister or the ministry what transpired at that meeting. So if it is the face of the Minister of Education that we want at our meetings, we are not seeing that face. But the representation of the ministry, to the best of my knowledge, it has always been there. In fact, we have, I think, a deputy director that attends. The director of tertiary education used to attend our meetings. The immediate past permanent secretary in the ministry initially used to come to our meetings. And so I think there is some representation. If there are issues to be sorted out between the ministry, the two ministries, they know where to do that one.
It sounds, you'll forgive me, Dr. Pinuma, if the Nigerian student thinks that what you said about the Ministry of Education attending the meetings is a cosmetic approach at trying to solve a much bigger problem. There are those who believe that, look, if we don't deal with it, we just had a guest speak to us earlier here, that if you don't deal with the problem of education, whatever infrastructure development that we put up is going to go into shambles within the next few years. So attending the meeting is not the thing for me. The question is, what is their role in attempting to prevent the shambles that you are talking about now, that is staring us in the face if we do not address the challenges that ASUU is having to contend with and the rot in the universities that you've been talking about?
Well, you said the attendance of the Ministry of Education is cosmetic. all of them, the Ngige, the Ministry of Education, the accountant, they are all hairdressers. They are all cosmeticians. Not all of them. There is none of them that is sincere. None of them. I read this morning on my way here, the Honorable Minister of Labour saying that we are insincere. You know, these days there are definitions for so many things. And when we meet him, and I'm sure we will, he will tell us what the definition of sincerity is.
The 1 month warning strike, which you've given right now, what do you hope it will achieve?
We hope that the 1 month warning strike will give NIREC, led by the Sultan and the President of Khan, that the 1 month will give them an opportunity to prove themselves. We hope that this 1 month will make the Chief of Staff to the President return to the person we met in 2020. Because at that time, we felt his word was sure and we could take it to the bank. But 1.5 or so years after that, we are beginning to think that the words of the Chief of Staff is close to that we've been hearing over time. So this 1 month is to give him time, is to give NIREC time, and give any Nigerian the opportunity to speak to these individuals and see if they will reason. So that, look, this 1 month strike, why won't this strike end in a week now? Why? Why should it be up to a month?
So it can end in a week?
It should. It should. If they do what they are supposed to do, we must not go on strike for 1 month.
Let's take a break at this point. We'll be back to discuss alternatives. Could there be alternatives to raising these funds, which ASUU is talking about? In just a moment, please stay with us. Well, we still have with us Dr. Christopher Piwuna, who is the Vice President of ASUU here in our studios. Or just before we went on break, we said we were going to talk about alternatives. Dr. Piwuna, you say that the federal government still has 170 billion naira to pay for this tranche, the second tranche of the 1.3 trillion that was initially agreed. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Of that, now, you heard the Minister of Labour talk about how 40 billion was released and then another 30 billion released and another, is it 22 billion? I don't know. Did you hear him say that?
Well, let me even take this question from the point of sincerity and insincerity that the Minister of Labour was talking about earlier on. He said in that clip that you just heard now, that in August, 40 billion was released for revitalization. Dr. Ngige knows that we met with him in November talking about the release of that 40 billion. So which 40 billion is he talking about that was released in August? Which 40 billion? He just said it now on screen. That, you see, that's what they tell the president of this country. They tell him these things, and the president will think they are telling him the truth.
But hold on.
In November, we met with Dr. Ngige in his office. It was shown. If you look at your archives, you will find that meeting. At that meeting in November, we were talking about convening a meeting of the Implementation Monitoring Committee to ensure release of that 40 billion. He's saying to Nigerians that money was released in August. That's a very sincere man.
Tell us then, I mean, because you talked about 75 billion which was released. You said 35 billion was for earned allowances and 40 billion was for revitalization.
Yes.
Isn't that the 40 billion he was referring to?
Well, I thank you for this question. You know, like we agreed, and like someone said in Lagos, that just attending meetings do not translate to implementing or getting results out of these meetings. We have met with these people since December 2020 over this 35-40 billion. It was never released. In December, when they were going to release the EAA to us, in his office, he told us that we were going to get the money in a week's time, before Christmas. He called the Accountant General's representative and said, well, don't go on holiday, stay. We never got this money till February. It started coming in January and February. So
that's February 2021 was when the, how much was released? How much
the
was
35 billion
was released, for earned allowances.
For earned allowances.
But 40 billion was never released.
See, as I'm talking to you now,
yes,
there are universities that have still not accessed the 40 billion, but for good reasons. Some of them did not follow the guidelines.
But 40 billion was released.
40 billion.
That interview was done in December. That interview where he spoke was done in December. So perhaps as at the time he spoke, that 40 billion had been released.
No, but that's not what he said. He said the money was released in August. That was what he said. Whether the interview was held in December or in August or in January this year, what he said was that the money was released in August, and that is not true.
Okay, so 40 billion, however, has now been released and is now left for universities to see how to access it. He also made reference to another amount of money. I think, if I heard correctly, I'm not sure I heard correctly, it's either 2 billion or 22 billion, and there's a huge difference between 2 and 22 billion. Can you clarify for us what that money was for?
Part of the reasons why we went on strike was the issue of mainstreaming of our EA into our salaries. Why do we need to mainstream? Backlog of EAA has become a burden that we think government cannot even shoulder. So we said, in order to solve this problem, why don't you mainstream the EAA into our salaries? So it comes naturally. So we don't keep going on strike saying, you have not paid for 2013, you have not paid for 2015, where you're still owing us 2013. No, mainstream it into our salaries. They agreed and said they were going to send a supplementary request budget to the National Assembly, which they did. That's the 22 billion he's talking about.
And it has been released.
It has been released.
And it has been put into the salaries.
But there's more to it.
Okay.
It was released for 2020. They did not mainstream it in 2021. They did not mainstream it in 2022. So what is the idea of the mainstreaming? We're still running the same business of arrears. If we say mainstream, mainstream means mainstreaming. So do it. Let it constantly run in our salaries. So we don't have to say, oh, you're owing us for... But now, the 20 billion for 2020 that they released this year, no, towards the end of last year, they are still not mainstreamed. So we are going to
have a backlog for 2021
and 2022 because the budgets have been passed. And then the issue of UTAS, which was also part of why we went on strike. NIDA, through the Minister of Labour, wrote to us.
Through the Minister of Labour or through the Minister of Communications?
Well, it was the Labour Minister that got in touch with us.
Okay.
NIDA must have written their parent minister, and he wrote to Ngige. We got a communication from Dr. Ngige, the Minister of Labour, saying that that our UTAS cannot be deployed because it has failed. Today again, the minister has said 500 tests were conducted on NIDA, on UTAS, and that we failed. ASUU's software failed 300. It is not true. And that is another sincere statement.
Insincere, you mean?
No, I mean, they are sincere people. Where are the insincere ones? That is another sincere statement from them. That 500, there were 678 tests that were conducted. 687 tests that were conducted. Our software passed 529.
How did you get those figures?
They gave us now.
NIDA gave it to you?
Yes, that letter that he sent to us, they gave it to us. If you have 600 questions and you pass 500. Is that a pass or a fail? No, ma. I want you to answer it. I'm sorry.
I assume it's a rhetorical question that doesn't need an answer.
But let me say this. Let me say this. On this same UTAS, this NIDA that is supposed to encourage homegrown software, partner with anybody who can do all these things, we're sorry to say, they have lost their professional capacity to speak about UTAS. Why? We have a document here where NIDA plagiarized the report. They went online or wherever, took a report somewhere that is totally unrelated to UTAS and transposed it on the report that they sent to their minister, to the Minister of Labour, and brought to us that our UTAS has failed. Plagiarism is a very serious...
That's a very heavy allegation.
I want you to investigate it. It is here. It is here. We have it here. We have it here. This is what they took online. And then transposed it on the report they sent to government, saying that UTAS has failed. So you can see a deliberate attempt, a very deliberate attempt by government and its agents to ensure that all the demands, patriotic demands of ASUU, genuine demands by ASUU, for the betterment of the Nigerian university system, they always try to cut it down.
Well, you have said that this strike doesn't need to last a month,
yes,
that it can be over in 1 week.
Yes.
And I'm sure that that's what a lot of people are holding on to. They would like to hold on to that. The parents, the students, whoever it is that is funding their education as well, will also be very interested in that piece of news. I'm wondering, what alternatives are there? Because let's face it, 1.3 trillion naira for revitalization and a host of other things that is needed in our university system. And we know the current state of our university systems. We know that we need to do something urgently about it. But we also know the current state of the economy. We know the current state that government is in. And we know that at this rate, it might not be able to carry it all alone. What alternatives is ASUU proposing to government that if you also look this way, perhaps we might be able to, carry this burden and get this goal done faster?
You know, the other clip that you showed, clearly the president was asking us.
Yes.
The president and commander-in-chief was asking us to show understanding that the times are hard. And he's right. Times are hard. We don't only know that times are hard in this country. Times are very, very bad in this country. So we know. We know. 1.3 trillion naira is a huge chunk of money. And that chunk cannot be coughed out easily. So we said 170 billion. The 170 billion, we say even that is too heavy. That government cannot give to universities 170 billion. So we came up with a plan and said even that 1.7 billion, 70 billion, break it down. Well,
and pay every quarter. Is that
yes.
And pay. It still. What it still means is that government still has to cough it out. If you are owing money,
but they are not coughing out 1.3 trillion.
So what are
they are not coughing out
170
billion.
Yes. So perhaps they don't have to cough it out all at once, but they still have to cough it out.
Exactly.
That's the point. So some people are saying, there are many ways, because people are saying, if as it currently stands, a lot of Nigerians, despite how difficult things are, despite the humongous, the escalating rate exchange rate, naira to the dollar or naira to the pound or naira to whatever other currency we're exchanging it into, despite how it is going with this exchange rate, Nigerians are still able to send their children abroad. A lot of people who are tired of the government system are still finding ways to put their children in private universities. Private universities are springing up on the daily, almost, it will seem. And many more requests are being made to the NUC for accreditation and all manner of things from these universities. It means that money that could come to government is going elsewhere. Is ASUU exploring other alternatives that it is proposing to government that perhaps if we look this way as well? And I know that there have been proposals in the past. TET Fund was as a result of one of such proposals. And we understand that TET Fund has been doing some work in that regard. So what other alternatives can we be looking at that would not come directly from government, perhaps a partnership that could help to revitalize our educational system?
Well, that argument about alternatives on how public universities or institutions, should be run in Nigeria has been on for a very long time. And it is, for us, an ideological argument. While private enterprise and all that is going on, we believe that education is for public good. And because of that, we should seek ways to plug excesses and losses in government to ensure that, things like education, health, agriculture, education is not the only sector. We understand. We understand.
There are many competing needs.
There are. But if they can plug the excesses in the system, I was coming here this morning. As I was driving to this place, there's a heavy traffic, which I'm sure you know, because of fuel queues.
Scarcity.
Fuel scarcity in town. There were 7 government vehicles blaring their siren. 7. Where are they going to? Where? Who are they carrying? What are they carrying? Who bought the fuel for the 7 vehicles? There are so many excesses in this government. So when you tell us that, we should privatize, not you. When people say, privatize educational institutions or, pay school fees, do this, do that, we can see the excesses in the system that can be used to solve this problem. And you're telling us that we should allow the excesses to continue while we start paying fees. It's not possible.
Well, we'll see. I believe that there certainly can be, maybe not privatization, perhaps other ways. And I believe that, ASUU and government and perhaps other well-meaning individuals who have, stepped in to help negotiate and bring an end to this, perhaps might be able to look that way as well. But we have to thank you so much for your time this morning. I think it's also very important to say that we did tried to reach the Ministry of Labour. In fact, we invited them to this program, but they're yet to respond. We believe that perhaps as time goes on, they too might be willing to reach out and let us, have what their concerns are and what their own side of the story is from what has been given here. But we have to thank you so much for coming on this morning. Dr. Christopher Piwuna is the Vice President of the Academic Staff Union of Universities. Thank you so much for coming on the program this morning. Well, we'll take a break at this point and we're back to take on another matter equally controversial in a moment. Please stay with us.